Hi. When I first began my research for this talk, with the topic of social networking in mind, I asked some of my friends what they would be most interested in learning about it. Despite the fact that they weren't together when I asked them, they all said they wanted to know why Facebook makes them feel bad. After I prodded them a little more, they explained that when they see their friends doing big things with their lives, like getting a new job, traveling, getting married, or having kids, they feel bad because their life isn't as good. So I can understand why Facebook would have that effect. We often try to display our best selves on these social networking sites, even if it doesn't accurately represent our lives. This creates an unrealistic standard for comparison. That might not be a big deal in small doses, but the more we're exposed to these unrealistic standards, the more chances we have to compare ourselves to them and feel inadequate. However, instead of limiting the amount of time we're spending on our social networking accounts, data indicates that we're increasing it. The current global average amount of time that people are spending on social networking sites each day is 1.77 hours. As you might guess, 16 to 24-year-olds spend even more time online, averaging 2.68 hours social networking daily. And 25 to 34-year-olds are not far behind, spending 2.16 hours social networking daily. Given the increasing amount of time that we're spending on these accounts, it's important to consider how we're influencing social networking and how it's influencing us. So one of the big questions this brings up is, why do we spend so much time online? There are so many social networking sites. Why does anyone use them? The short answer, and the main reason, is that we enjoy it. Beyond enjoyment, we use it to build and maintain relationships, and we also use it and continue to do so because our peers do. Those are very basic explanations. Our reasons for using social networking sites actually extend much deeper than that. From an evolutionary perspective, it's wired into us. No, these past few million years of evolution have not been preparing us to use hashtags, but they have prepared us to be social. Humans have always had to rely on one another to survive, and we're more successful when we have other humans to help us. So when we use social networking sites, we're meeting very basic needs through very advanced technology. We benefit from building and maintaining relationships, whether they be with family, friends, or romantic partners, and that contributes to the success of these websites. However, data indicates that our brains are not distinguishing our online interactions from our physical interactions. One of the most important hormones in humans is oxytocin. It makes us feel connected to each other, and when it's released, we feel affection, contentment, and it builds a foundation for trust. It's the hormone that helps moms bond with their babies after they're born. So Paul Zak, a neuroeconomist who specifically researches oxytocin, has conducted studies wherein he measures a person's oxytocin levels through a blood test, has them use a social networking site for 10 minutes, and then measures their oxytocin levels again. He's found that in just those 10 minutes, people can experience an increase in oxytocin and a decrease in stress hormones. One person who he conducted this research with was just scrolling through his social networking feed, had a 13.2% increase in oxytocin, and another man who had used his 10 minutes to write on his girlfriend's Facebook page had a 150% increase. This research should not be considered conclusive, as it has only been conducted with a very small sample size, but it has remarkable implications for how our brains are interpreting our consumption of social media. We're not distinguishing our online interactions from our face-to-face interactions, but the differences between the two are very real. When we use a social networking site, we're passively consuming social information rather than actively participating in a social situation. So despite the oxytocin spikes we may be experiencing that make us feel good in the moment, social networking has been shown to have very negative impacts on psychology. Specifically, it's problematic in regards to social comparison, which is what my friends, who I talked about in the beginning, are experiencing. Social comparison is completely normal, but studies show that when combined with Facebook use, it can be particularly detrimental. One study found that women, when exposed to Facebook versus a control website, were in a more negative mood afterward. For women who have more of a tendency to compare appearances, more time on Facebook led to more hair, face, and skin discrepancies. These aspects of appearance are likely most discrepant due to the photo content on Facebook. People mostly post selfies, whether they're alone or with others, and so the photos are headshots rather than body shots. Thus, hair, face, and skin become the object of comparison. Interestingly, though, people who use only Facebook are different than people who use both Facebook and Twitter. Facebook-only users report spending more time on Facebook than people who use both spend on Facebook and Twitter combined. People who use only Facebook also report more loneliness. This could be due to the nature of these sites. As you can see, Facebook requires that we share much more personal information, whereas Twitter requires very little personal information and is more about sharing opinions and information. Twitter is also less devoted to reciprocal interactions. We, of course, cannot conclude that Twitter causes people to be less lonely. Instead, it may be that people who are using Facebook are using it to try and combat loneliness. Facebook isn't the only problem, though. Pinterest has negative consequences, too. And we've all been there. You see a really cool project on the internet. You think it looks super easy, so you try and do it yourself, and you end up creating something awful that looks nothing like the original. It's easy for us to laugh about, but today surveyed 7,000 moms in 2013 and found that 42% sometimes experienced what they referred to as Pinterest stress. In other words, these moms were worried that they weren't crafty or creative enough. Pinterest creates this illusion that every other mom is really organized, throwing elaborate birthday parties, experimenting with new recipes, and doing adorable crafts with their kids. If you've ever tried to do a project with a kid, you know that the finished product never looks like the sample. But when the standard for comparison isn't real or obtainable, and people believe it is, they feel inadequate. Social networking isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and it's very difficult to escape. Even if you don't have any social networking accounts, you're still being exposed to stories about it, and you can see other people using it. Almost every online article comes with a comment section or a place to share your response. In the past, when you'd hear a news story or read an article in the paper, you would gather your information, form your opinion, and that was it. Today, anyone in the world can comment on any public posting, and a lot of times there are really negative and hateful things posted there. We have no control over how other people choose to use these platforms, which means we need to learn to manage our emotional responses to it. A great way to do this is to employ different aspects of the process model of emotion regulation, which was proposed by James Gross. One of the most important messages that this model presents is that we have a lot of opportunities to intervene in our own cognitive processes. So think back to the example I discussed in the beginning with my friends who express feelings of inadequacy when using Facebook. A good way to start combating those feelings would be to exert situational control. Unfriending or unfollowing people so that their posts no longer show up in their news feed could be beneficial. If they don't want to remove people, they can change which posts they give their attention to. Instead of looking through the engagement photos, they can scroll past. This becomes impossible when Facebook is a string of friends' accomplishments, and that's when appraisal needs to change. If seeing friends having kids is what makes my friends feel bad because they don't have any kids of their own yet, they can consider how exciting it must be in sharing their friends' happiness instead of feeling sadness for themselves. If we're more actively aware of what we're consuming on social networking sites and how, we can have a more positive experience. Thank you.